An abundance unit that has a kit similar to that of an harmony support, or an Erudition unit that has one of the strongest ultimates in the entire game. Hey guys, Mr. Pokke here, back with another video. On this episode of CN's Pooling Opinions, we'll be discussing about the upcoming version 1.5 5-star limited units, Huo Huo and Yingzhi or Huo Huo and Argenti. The context for this video is deciding between who to pool, and the CN Hype Watch will cover the unit's speculative kit before release with greater details, as well as Silver Wolves rerun. We'll be discussing it in another day. And furthermore, just to stress, for all of my CN pooling opinions, these are offering CN's perspective based on the livestream event, and players should definitely do their own due diligence. The target audience for my content is going to be meant for free-to-plays and low spenders, under the assumption that viewers cannot get both units, no idlers, and we're not pulling for signature light code. Let me know in the comments who are you guys going to be pulling for and why are you going to be pulling for them. So without further ado, let's get into today's content. Just to quickly summarize the estimated pool income, version 1.5 is gonna last from the 11th of November to the 26th of December, right after Christmas. The usual 42 days this time. It is no longer a 5-week patch, it's gonna be a 6-week patch, right? So for the free-to-plays, as you guys can see from the total income, is roughly around 6,830 jades with 10 special passes, which translates to 52 limited pools and some of the bonus, right? So for this bonus, we are estimating roughly 5,000 stellar jades across 3 events, the new map as well as the new simulated universe 8. And then for the spending players, we are gonna have 42 days of monthly pass, which is equivalent to 3,780 stellar jades as well as 600 honorific shards. And then the battle pass for one paid version, we're gonna have an additional 680 jade and 4 special summons, which totals to 11,890 jades, 14 special summons and 21 normal summons, to a total of 88 limited pools plus the bonus as well. So this is very comparable to the previous pool income on version 1.3. If you guys have already guaranteed the 50-50 from either Topaz banner or Jingliu's banner or any of the previous banners, then you're pretty much guaranteed to get either Huo Huo or Argenti, right? So that is that for the estimated pool income. And with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into Huo Huo herself. She is gonna be a utility sustain unit. What I mean by utility sustain is that nowadays, sustains need to offer much more than just healing and skill point positivity to match up with our 2 current sustain powerhouses, namely Fu Xuan and Luo Cha, right? But fortunately for Huo Huo, she brings on an extremely rare mechanic that we've only really seen from Ting Yun, that is energy regeneration. Her ultimate regenerates energy for all allies as well as an attack percentage buff. Now keep in mind that this is going to be energy for all allies. Players definitely to manage their expectations is probably, I'm 99% sure it is not going to be as high as Ting Yun's single target ultimate. And then her skill is going to be a 3 target adjacent heal with a talent providing some passive healing to aid her skill point positivity. So that is essentially the summary of her kit, and the supplementary 4 stars, unfortunately, Huo Huo's banner has some of the least appealing 4 stars to date, with Arlen, Dunheng and Servo all having better substitutes. Although this can be slightly useful for newer players to increase their early game DPS damage, right? If you guys have completely skipped out every single previous DPS banner, or you literally just started the game with Huo Huo's banner, then Dunheng and Servo's idlers may help you with some additional damage in the early game. But towards the end, once you raise up all of the other units, once you raise up some sort of like 5-star alternatives, which will take much lesser investments to bring them up to speed, then you're probably not going to be sticking with this unit. So there's her supplementary 4 stars. Now the verdict for her pool value. If you're somebody that's looking to increase the damage output while still sustaining your team, which is essentially trying to look for somebody that can heal while providing additional buffs, then she's gonna be a 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 in that department. But however, if players already built 2 or even more sustains, then her value drastically drops down to 2 out of 10. So here's the top progression, right? Once a player progresses far enough in Honkai Star Rail, it is very unlikely for any player to run more than 2 sustains across 2 teams. So you could either run like a single sustain for both teams, or one side of the team you could just run an ultra hyper carry with absolutely no sustain as long as you can clear the stage, right? So typically speaking, sustains are generally not as in demand once you already have your baseline sustain established. This could be Natasha, it could be March 7, Lynx, and now even Fire MC can help you guys clear most if not all of the endgame content. Another point is that sustains also do not need to change and adjust as much as DPS or support units, right? Because as long as sustains can keep our team alive and generate skill point positivity, then there isn't a very massive difference. You could use Luo Cha, you could use Fu Xuan, or you could use Natasha, you could use March 7th, but as long as at the end of the day your team is able to survive, sustain is not going to be the main impact as to whether you clear the stage or not. It is likely going to be how strong your DPS is. Are you on element? Is the DPS getting enough buffs? So that is going to be the determining factor if you can already sustain your team, right? So with that said, CN believes that Huo Huo is actually not so much as a sustain, but more so like a harmony unit with additional like healing factors, right, with her sustain. And as such, she's not as versatile as compared to other sustains. Now, why do CN say this is because the biggest comparison right now is between Huo Huo and Luo Cha, right? Between these two units, since they're both 5-star limited abundance units, there's definitely some form of competition as to which unit is better in terms of sustaining. For Luo Cha, his benefit is he's extremely skill point positive. He has the AoE heal, he doesn't need to use skill points, and not to mention his ultimate also has debuffs, and the Abyss Flower field, as long as your speed is fast enough, is almost having 100% uptime. So in terms of sustainability, Luo Cha is pretty much one of, if not the best sustains. Whereas in comparison, Huo Huo doesn't really have that much skill points to spare because her heal is essentially just tied up to her using her skill, right? And after using her skill, then her talent can be triggered. So to a certain extent, players definitely need to use her skill on Huo Huo eventually if they want to gain any sort of healing, right? But the benefit to Huo Huo is she is definitely much more offense and utility oriented compared to Luo Cha because of the energy buff as well as the attack percentage buff. So unless your Luo Cha is E6, Huo Huo is going to provide much more value if a player can already clear a difficult content without relying that much on sustain. So that is the biggest comparison between those two. And as such, new players may face issues due to Huo Huo's lack of healing on her ultimate and more skill point usage compared to, like I mentioned, Luo Cha or even Bailu, right? But in the right team comps where players can already clear the content, in the right team comps where you need the extra bit of energy or the extra bit of attack percentage buff, then Huo Huo is going to be an extremely powerful abundance unit. And now moving on to Argenti, he is going to be an AoE hyper carry, very much similar to Jingyuan, right? As our first physical limited 5-star unit, Argenti excels at content with multiple enemies, which increases his energy and crit rate using his talent, as well as having an ultimate that functions like Lightning Lord, but without its clunkiness and difficulty to receive buffs. Now, two things is that his enhanced ultimate does extra damage to random target, which means his damage is not gonna fall off too much even if we only have content with like single or dual targets, because it's essentially exactly the same as the Lightning Lord, right? If it all focuses on a single target, you're gonna do additional damage. So that's a good thing about Argenti's enhanced ultimate. And another thing is that his skill and ultimate, it is really just straight up a damage multiplier, right? There's the lack of any additional effects, and this may result in compensation with higher base damage multipliers, which means that Argenti might see some really high numbers. As for this point, we're just gonna have to wait and see when he's finally released. For his supplementary 4 stars compared to Huo Huo, he is definitely much more valuable. Hanya's kit requires further testing, but any new Harmony unit is always going to be well appreciated. While Lynx and Asa's Idolants, they are all excellent in terms of sustain and buff coverage. So definitely much better 4 stars on Argenti's banner. And as for his verdict, if players are lacking an AoE hyper carry, which is to say if you guys don't have destruction units at the previous destruction trio, right? If you don't have Kafka, if you don't have Jingyuan, then he's going to be a solid 7 out of 10. But if players already have sufficient DPS coverage, if you guys already put for a lot of the previous DPS banners, then his value is not going to be as high at only 2 out of 10. So Argenti's kit it looks very simplistic, right? You clear the mobs with your skills and ultimate and then unleash higher damage with our enhanced ultimate once the number of target reduces. His scaling will definitely improve as the number of elites or the number of enemies increase, and his damage will definitely not be disappointing, because if you already have a very simplistic kit as a DPS unit, as a limited 5-star DPS unit, then players can definitely expect bigger multipliers in order to compensate for this more simplistic kit, right? And CN believes that his damage output is extremely dependent on the enhanced ultimate uptime. So Ting Yun and perhaps even Huo Huo are likely a must to be included in his team composition. So with this point, I do want to say that if players are intending to get both Argenti and Huo Huo as a light expander or free to play, then players might face some difficulties unless you guys wait for a rerun in the future, right? With one of the most simplistic designs so far, Argenti can be an excellent pickup for beginners struggling to understand more complex mechanics. You don't have to understand speed tuning, you don't have to understand when should we time out buffs, when should we time out ultimates. All you really need to do is just give him the buffs that he needs, unleash your damage, and then when you see the enhanced ultimate button light up, use it against the high health targets, right? It's really simplistic Angam Banga play style, right? In summary, for players that are lacking a sustain to this day, or if players want a sustain with even more utility, more offensive utility, then Huo Huo is going to be an excellent pickup. Whereas on the other hand, if players just want to pick up an extremely easy to use hyper carry, especially if you're a new player, then Argenti is going to be an excellent choice. So talking a little bit about their potential weaknesses, right? For Huo Huo, she might be more skill point intensive and less sustain friendly compared to the previous limited sustain, namely Luocha and Fu Xuan, right? So we're trading off sustain capabilities for more utility on Huo Huo, and this may provide a less comfortable playing experience for newer players, where at the start of the game we're definitely facing much higher sustain issues, right? Towards the end, maybe players that have been playing since day one, you guys won't really feel this, but if you just started playing this game, sustain was the key to everything, and Huo Huo might have some issues when competing against like Luocha or Fu Xuan, right? And then for Argenti, his simplistic kit is a good thing in the sense where it's easy to learn, and you're definitely going to see some big damage numbers, right? But unfortunately, it's more likely for him to get overshadowed by future units with more unique mechanics going beyond just big damage multipliers, and this may be an issue if our endgame content right now, which is Memory of Chaos, they continuously increase the scaling or introduce some sort of mechanic that can cripple Argenti's very simplistic design. Generally speaking, Huo Huo is more suitable for advanced players, while Argenti is better suited for newer players. And of course, if players have already created a team of 8 that can consistently clear Memory of Chaos or any of the endgame content, then you can definitely save your pools to pull for future banners, unless you guys really like Huo Huo or Argenti for waifu, husbando, or enjoyment reasons. And with that, we've come to the end of this episode of CN Pulling Opinions. If you guys want to engage in further discussions, feel free to check out my Discord at Pokke's Village, where I have a very active community talking about Hongai Star Rail on a daily basis. If you guys want to check out my stream, that's going to be twitch.tv/MrPokke, where I'm streaming 3 times a week, and the schedule will be updated on Discord as well, right? So with that, we've come to the end of today's content, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.